Welcome back, dear friends, to the Crimson Academy's course on the Kitab-i-Iqan. In this section, we're covering paragraphs 130 through 133 of the Kitab-i-Iqan. In these paragraphs, His Holiness Baha'u'llah resumes his discourse on the theme of sovereignty of the Ghayyam and illustrates that such sovereignty is not a physical dominion of power. He also more explicitly describes the nature of the sovereignty of His Holiness the Bab. Dear friends, we share with you some following key points from these paragraphs. By the term, the abject manifestations of the Prince of Darkness is meant the divines of the time of the Bab, who opposed him and his revelation. The sovereignty prophesied for the Ghayyam in Islamic traditions cannot be worldly dominion. The divines of Persia committed that which no people amongst the peoples of the world have committed. And friends, this is a reference to Baha'u'llah cited by the beloved guardian Shaykh Effendi in The Promised Day is Come, page 87. And the sovereignty of God is not accidental, but everlasting and eternal. And friends, this is a reference to His Holiness Abdul Baha in The Promulgation of Universal Peace, page 272. Since God manifests His attributes and signs perfectly in His manifestations, they represent the ultimate power and sovereignty of God in the kingdom of attributes and names in this world. In paragraph 130, His Holiness Baha'u'llah states that despite the emergence of the Son of Divine Knowledge, people still follow the ways of the abject manifestations of the Prince of Darkness. The Son of Divine Knowledge is a reference to the revelation of the Bab. According to the beloved guardian Shaykh Effendi, the abject manifestations of the Prince of Darkness is a reference to the clergy of the time who showed severe opposition to the Bab and persecuted his followers. And friends, this is from the beloved guardian Shaykh Effendi in The Promised Day is Come, page 99, referring to them as the horde of degraded priests in The Promised Day is Come. And this is from The Promised Day is Come, page 99. Shaykh Effendi quotes the references by which Baha'u'llah has stigmatized the clergy, doctors of doubt, wolves, pharaohs, focal centers of hellish fire, and voracious beasts preying upon the carrion of the souls of men. And friends, this is reference Baha'u'llah in the Kitab-i-Iqan, page 31. As an example, Sheikh Muhammad Bagher of Isfahan, who played a major role in the martyrdom of Aba Badi, was called the Wolf by Baha'u'llah, and his son Sheikh Muhammad Taghi, known as Agha Najafi, the son of the Wolf. Agha Najafi became the leading mujtahid of Isfahan after the death of his father. Adib Tahirzadeh writes, he was an inveterate enemy and formidable opponent of the cause of Baha'u'llah, a vicious and evil-minded clergyman who fulfilled the famous saying, "The child is the secret of his sire." He well merits the title Son of the Wolf. And friends, this is a reference Adib Tahirzadeh, The Revelation of Baha'u'llah, Volume 4, Mazre and Bahji, 1877 to 1892, page 368. At the time of his father, Agha Najafi collaborated with his father to plan and murder Baha'is. On the occasion of the martyrdom of the King of Martyrs and the beloved of martyrs, he rolled up his sleeves and was personally ready to perform the execution. Baha'u'llah has identified the divines as the main obstacle for people to recognize a new manifestation of God. He states, the leaders of men have from time immemorial prevented the people from turning unto the most great ocean. The friend of God, Abraham, was cast into fire throughout the sentence pronounced by the divines of the age, and lies and calumnies were imputed to him who discoursed with God. Reference to Moses. Reflect upon the one who was the Spirit of God. It's a reference to Jesus. Though he showed forth the utmost compassion and tenderness, yet they rose up against that essence of being and Lord of the seen and unseen, in such a manner that he could find no refuge wherein to rest. Each day he wandered unto a new place and sought a new shelter. Consider the seal of the prophets. It's a reference to Muhammad. May the souls of all else except him be his sacrifice. How grievous the things which befell that Lord of all being at the hands of the priests of idolatry and of the Jewish doctors, after he had uttered the blessed words proclaiming the unity of God. By my life, my pen groaneth, and all created things cry out by reason of the things that have touched him, at the hands of such as have broken the covenant of God and his testament, and denied his testimony, and gainsaid his signs. And friends, this is His Holiness Baha'u'llah, quoted by the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi in The Promised Days Come, page 80. In many of his writings, Baha'u'llah refers to the atrocities that the divines, in particular the Shia Muslim clergy, committed against the Bab, himself, and their followers. In one of his tablets he states, the source and origin of tyranny have been the divines. God verily is clear of them, and we too are clear of them. And again, this is His Holiness Baha'u'llah quoted by the beloved guardian, in this time in God Passes By, page 231. In another tablet, Baha'u'llah states, when we observed carefully, we discover that our enemies are, for the most part, the divines. And this is His Holiness Baha'u'llah in the Proclamation of Baha'u'llah, page 76. While referring specifically to the Muslim clergy, Baha'u'llah states, they rose up against us with such cruelty as have sapped the strength of Islam. And this is Baha'u'llah quoted by Shoghi Effendi in God Passes By, page 231. He also confirms the divines of Persia committed that which no people amongst the peoples of the world have committed. And also the divines of Persia have perpetrated what the Jews have not perpetrated during the revelation of him who is the Spirit, meaning Jesus. And this, friends, again was in Baha'u'llah quoted by the beloved guardian in God Passes By, page 231. While addressing a Persian mujtahid responsible for the martyrdom of Baha'is, Baha'u'llah states in the Lohe Burhan, O heedless one, rely not on thy glory and thy power. Thou art even as the last trace of sunlight upon the mountaintop. Soon will it fade away, as decreed by God, the all-possessing, the Most High. Thy glory and the glory of such as are like thee have been taken away, and this verily is what hath been ordained by the one with whom is the mother tablet. Because of you, the apostle Muhammad lamented, and the chaste one, Fatima, cried out, and the countries were laid waste, and darkness fell upon all regions. O concourse of divines, because of you, the people were abased, and the banner of Islam was hauled down, and its mighty throne subverted. Every time a man of discernment hath sought to hold fast unto that which would exalt Islam, you raised a clamor, and thereby was he deterred from achieving his purpose, while the land remained fallen in clear ruin. And this is His Holiness Baha'u'llah, quoted by the beloved guardian Shaykh Effendi in The Promised Day Is Come, page 88. In paragraph 130, Baha'u'llah also emphasizes that only those who turn to him, the blessed Bab, and reject the manifestations of Satan will receive the knowledge of God. He counsels the uncle of the Bab that if he reflects on the outward and inward meaning of the words uttered by him, then he would grasp the significance of all the difficult problems that have become barriers between men and the knowledge of the Day of Judgment. His Holiness Baha'u'llah resumes in paragraph 131 his elucidation of the sovereignty of the Bab in response to a question as to how the Bab could have fulfilled the prophecies regarding the sovereignty of the Ghayyam while being persecuted by his enemies, the Shia priesthood. Shaykh Effendi explains, the arch enemy who repudiated the Bab's claim, challenged his authority, persecuted his cause, succeeded in almost quenching his light, and who eventually became disintegrated under the impact of his revelation was the Shia priesthood. Fiercely fanatic, unspeakably corrupt, enjoying unlimited ascendancy over the masses, jealous of their position, and irreconcilably opposed to all liberal ideas, the members of this caste had for 1,000 years invoked the name of the hidden Imam. Their breasts had glowed with the expectation of his advent. Their pulpits had rung with the praises of his world-embracing dominion. Their lips were still devoutly and perpetually murmuring prayers for the hastening of his coming. And friends, this is the beloved guardian Shaykh Effendi in God Passes By, page 4. Baha'u'llah reiterates that the prophesied sovereignty of the Bab was spiritual, not physical. He asks the uncle of the Bab to reflect on how, through the utterance of one word, the Bab has manifested a dominion that is far superior to the earthly sovereignty of the earthly kings, they who cannot expect more than a mere outward loyalty from their subjects. The many dedicated followers of the Bab who gave their lives and existence for his name are obvious evidences of this sovereignty. The people who were attracted to the Bab and became his dedicated followers after recognizing him underwent a transformation that enabled them to give their lives and existence for his name. These people clearly demonstrate the Bab's spiritual influence and power. The Bab appeared among people whom the beloved guardian Shaykh Effendi describes as the most decadent race in the civilized world, grossly ignorant, savage, cruel, steeped in prejudice, servile in their submission to an almost deified hierarchy, recalling in their abjectness the Israelites of Egypt in the days of Moses, in their fanaticism, the Jews in the days of Jesus, and in their perversity, the idolaters of Arabia in the days of Muhammad. And friends, this is from the Beloved Guardian, God Passes By, page 4. In contrast, the disciples and the followers of the Bab displayed a spirit exalted, unquenchable, and awe-inspiring, a knowledge surprisingly profound, an eloquence sweeping in its force, a piety unexcelled in fervor, a courage leonine in its fierceness, a self-abnegation saintly in its purity, a resolve granite-like in its firmness, a vision stupendous in its range, a veneration for the Prophet and his Imams disconcerting to their adversaries, a power of persuasion alarming to their antagonists, a standard of faith and a code of conduct that challenged and revolutionized the lives of their countrymen. And this is from the Beloved Guardian, Shoghi Effendi, God Passes By, page 5. Baha'u'llah states in paragraph 132 that such an authority is only one of the manifestations of the spiritual sovereignty of the Bab, which unfolds only according to the capacity and receptiveness of the people of the time. The station of the Bab is so exalted that neither Baha'u'llah can reveal it nor the unworthy can comprehend it. This is due to the difference between the realities of the manifestations of God and that of ordinary people. In order to highlight this difference, His Holiness Baha'u'llah asks in one of his prayers, how can the creature who is as nothing comprehend him who is the Ancient of Days, or succeed in describing the full measure of his sovereignty, his glory, and his grandeur? And friends, this is from Baha'u'llah in Prayers and Meditations of Baha'u'llah, page 229. In paragraph 133, His Holiness Baha'u'llah states that the sovereignty prophesied for the Qiyam in Islamic traditions cannot be interpreted as an earthly sovereignty and worldly dominion. It cannot imply that the followers of the Qiyam will be exalted and live in peace, whereas his enemies will be abased. Such worldly dominion is not even true of God himself, as the generality of mankind are under the control of God's enemies, and have turned away from the path of his good pleasure, and have done what he has forbidden, and have failed to obey him. Moreover, the friends of God have often been the victims of their enemies. The sovereignty of God is far above the merely physical dominion, as stated by Baha'u'llah in one of his tablets. God has revealed his sovereignty in the kingdom of names and attributes by making each and every created thing a sign of his glory. And friends, this is a reference to His Holiness Baha'u'llah in Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah, page 184. Since God manifests his attributes and signs perfectly in his manifestations, they represent the ultimate power and sovereignty of God in the kingdom of attributes and names in this earthly world. In the Surah Hekal, this is the Surah of the Temple, His Holiness Baha'u'llah describes how the maiden representing the Most Great Spirit proclaimed his mission to all who are in heaven and all who are on earth, saying, By God, this is the best beloved of the worlds, and yet ye comprehend it not. This is the beauty of God amongst you, and the power of his sovereignty within you, could ye but understand. This is the mystery of God and his treasure, the cause of God and his glory unto all who are in the kingdoms of revelation and of creation, if ye be of them that perceive. It is possible to rebel against the sovereignty of God and to disbelieve in him, as Baha'u'llah has highlighted in paragraph 133. However, those who do so are the helpless victims of their corrupt inclinations and desires. These shall return to their abode in the fire of hell. Wretched is the abode of the deniers. And friends, this is a reference to Baha'u'llah in the Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah, page 284 to 285. His Holiness Abdul Baha explains that the sovereignty of God is not accidental, but everlasting and eternal. The sovereignty of God is eternal. There has been no beginning, and there will be no end. And friends, this is Abdul Baha in the Promulgation of Universal Peace, page 272. The physical sovereignty is, on the other hand, phenomenal, since the victor can become a victim and the conqueror can be conquered. Thank you, dear friends.